to your grill again. Live at the barbecue, how I can just kill him in. Solo shotgun, hand on the pump. What? Punks jump up to get beat down. Slump, get slump, get slump. Back to your grill again. Live at the barbecue, how I can just kill him in. Solo shotgun, hand on the pump. What? Punks jump up to get beat down. Slump, get slump. Got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it. It was them giving me credit. They took note of every single rapper that I shredded and said I broke records with the local paramedics. I was like, bet it. I got a fetish for these funerals, getting letters for lyrics and bonus as per usual. Usual suspects.
Welcome, familia, to Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your entire life. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your host, Collazo. Thank you again for this very special edition of Bomba Live. There's a reason this man in the Jibaro hat is taking the place of the Bomba Live logo, Angel Luis Medina. It's really almost nothing short of an iconic figure in the Philadelphia Puerto Rican Latino community. We've lost him. He's passed away, but he's still here with our hearts. So I'm going to be going to the viewing tomorrow, and that's why you have seen me not be as active on my personal social media, because we've been in mourning here in Philadelphia, and as well as Elizabeth Guaracao. We're in mourning for her loss as well. And we're going to talk later in the show about the legacy of Angel and Elizabeth and some of the people that we've lost and what they mean to us, and what we should learn from our mentors and the people that really paved the way for us as activists and in these communities. Thank you so much for joining us. This is your host, Collazo. Again, later on in the show, we're going to talk a little bit about Angel and Elizabeth's legacies. We are going to talk about Bad Bunny's Benito Cella performance. And some interesting, and that's going to be incorporated in our homenaje for Angel in a little bit. And we're going to talk about my experience in DC last week. I was honored to attend the America Votes conference, and it was really kind of like a welcome back for me in a lot of ways, in terms of kind of being in a group setting where I was able to connect with some of our allies and fellow advocates and fellow Latino leaders. And just fellow, buena gente around the country at this America Votes convening. And I want to give you not only kind of like how it went for me, you're going to hear from people that attended the conference from me. We got some great footage from folks coast to coast, literally, that are doing some really good work in our communities around the country. So I wanted to give them a platform to share what they're up to and their thoughts about how we all should be engaged in advocating for the things we care about in our community in 2023. Because even if there's not an election, even though there's elections all over the place locally around the country, including my home city, Philadelphia, coming up, and we'll have certainly some time to talk about that before the elections in May. But we need to be involved, because obviously I don't have to tell you, there's a lot going on, and there's specifically with the gun safety issue. I mean, that we're in crisis mode, and we're going to dedicate some time to bring in experts to talk about those issues, and I'll talk about those observations in a moment. But I wanted to start the show with talking about Clarence Thomas. And I think I've almost been remiss in talking about, the significance of Clarence Thomas. And I want to put it on the table, because we have to put this moment in our history with Clarence Thomas on the table. This is not Clarence Thomas. This is Thurgood Marshall. We're going to talk about Thurgood Marshall in a second, because you don't really understand the story of Clarence Thomas and the historical harm he has caused our country without understanding who Thurgood Marshall is. And so I want to put on the table now, let me get Thurgood off the tape when I say this, is that Clarence Thomas is the biggest sellout ever. And I've kind of come to grips with that. And, sellout's a very provocative word. And, I don't just throw that around lightly. People do what we got to do. And, you're not a sellout by being a black conservative or being a black Republican. Colin Powell's a black Republican. I almost don't, as much as he's been slipping, I almost don't even put like Tim Scott in that category. We can disagree with people that are conservative. There's wrong be a black conservative. You you're down with the community. Candace Owens, that's a whole other conversation. So I don't throw around those terminology flippantly, especially as a non-black person to, point fingers at people in the black community. But Clarence Thomas, I've come to believe, especially with his newest revelations of incredible impropriety and ethical behavior, receiving lavish financial gifts from a billionaire benefactor, that he's the biggest sellout in our nation's history. And I'm going to talk in a second about why I feel that way. But you have the story of Clarence Thomas, ironically enough, starts with this man, Thurgood Marshall. If you don't know who Thurgood Marshall is, obviously scholars can debate it, but Thurgood Marshall arguably is the second most important figure in Black civil rights history of the century, behind, of course, Martin Luther King. And why is that? Is that he really was the leader of the legal wing of the civil rights movement. You can motivate people, you can affect people personally, you can impact the social the thoughts and opinions and how people view these issues, but unless you change the laws to 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 create systems and institutions that defend the rights of Black people and other people, disenfranchised people, then you haven't done much. And so that was really the role of not just Thurgood Marshall, a whole legion of lawyers, many African American, not all, that really led the fight in the courts and ultimately on the Supreme Court level, oftentimes. So Thurgood Marshall is knows before being in the Supreme Court for being the lead lawyer with the NAA Legal Defense Fund in winning the seminal desegregation case, Brown versus Board of Education in the 50s, which desegregated our schools. And then, once that happened, then laws eventually came into effect to address housing discrimination, voting rights. All the dominoes started to fall from Brown versus Board. And Thurgood Marshall was the lead lawyer for that with his group of lawyers. And eventually became, through the appointment of President Lyndon B. Johnson at the time. Y'all don't think Puerto Ricans know about this kind of stuff. That the first African American Supreme Court justice until the 90s when he, got sick and as an older person and passed away. And so, going from one of the most impactful, certainly from a legal perspective, Black civil rights leaders and then Supreme Court justices of our time, George Bush, the first President Bush, had a decision to make. And this was a Kanye-esque chess move. This is like what Kanye did to Drake. You know what I'm saying? So what George Bush said, I'll replace the legal African-American icon of the civil rights movement, the legal, legend on the Supreme Court, Thurgood Marshall, with an African-American man named Clarence Thomas, who happens to be on the Republican side, but he's young and he's Black. So Clarence Thomas, at the time, even if you take away the ideological part of it, was kind of considered kind of a questionable choice. He didn't have a lot of experience. He was young. He didn't have really that much experience kind of on that, federal judicial level. He was considered a pretty weak candidate, almost kind of like the worst case affirmative action kind of scenario, ironically enough. And so then before we get into, are you really going to appoint a Republican leaning, a conservative leaning Black judge to replace Thurgood Marshall? That's diametrically opposed to what he was about ideologically and legally from a legal perspective. But then Anita Hill came into our lives and provided credible evidence and very credible accusations that he sexually harassed her when they were colleagues in the legal field over the years. And so, but Clarence Thomas wiggled out of that, and that was a different time. And you can imagine, now in 2023, the struggles we have with people listening to women when they have credible accusations, listening to Black women around a host of societal issues. And this very prominent, to this day, very well-respected Black woman, lawyer, academic, scholar, speaker, women's rights activist, was not listened to at the time by a bipartisan group of senators, including, let's keep it real, Senator Joe Biden, who eventually, at the time, Senator, now President Joe Biden, who eventually, in a bipartisan way, he was voted he was confirmed to be Supreme Court judge. And so, over the years, Clarence Thomas has basically done everything he can from a legal perspective to sell us out, from voting to ratify the very questionable 2000 presidential election, Bush versus Gore. You figure with a Bush in there, he'd recuse himself, considering his daddy's the one that gave him the job. From a whole host of issues, especially in the areas of most insidiously in the areas of black voting rights, which impacts primarily African Americans and others, including Latinos and Native Americans and other people. Women's rights, the Dobbs decision, and we're seeing the terrible, painful, deadly effects already that some women are experiencing. Wait till they start throwing more blacks and Latinos in prison over this decision, especially in the South. So voting rights, he just has spent his entire career not just dismantling the civil rights movement legally in so many ways, and now him some of his decisions and his lack of recusing himself with some of the January 6th legal issues, is the latest example of that. But he's literally spent his career dismantling the legacy of the man that he undoubtedly would have never have it led into the Supreme Court building if it wasn't for the legacy of people like former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. So to me, there's a very special place for this man. And now with these latest revelations that he has been withholding, forget all the legal opinions that have gone against the black community and disenfranchised people. Wait till he votes to abolish affirmative action in this country in the coming months. Wait for that one. And who knows what else he'll vote on in the coming months, in coming years. But through his relationship with billionaire, ultra right wing, conservative, activist, puppet master Harlan Crow, by disclosing some things, misleading on other things, not disclosing things like the fact that Harlan Crow's owned and his Clarence mother's house for many years and is allowing her to live there rent free, to lavish vacations. And he's really not just put by causing this crisis, constitutional crisis on the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be above all of this. Even when you have a crazy president, if you have a president that's really left or really right or incompetent, or there's a lot of animosity between the Congress and the political parties, when all that's un fracaso, we're supposed to have these people of high integrity, of the highest caliber, of the highest judicial acumen in the Supreme Court that are supposed to be above all that nonsense. He's not just been the biggest sellout in the history of Black America, but I would argue the biggest sellout to our country and our democracy in these modern times. Because if people don't believe in the judicial system, if people don't believe in that there's some baseline of respect for the Constitution on the highest levels of our judicial system, in the Supreme Court, puñeta, then we're not going to have the country that we should have. And for that, Clarence Thomas should be ashamed of himself, should immediately resign, and should try to spend the last years of his life trying to do what he can to make up for the harm that he's caused our country, and he's caused the legacy of Thurgood Marshall and those other heroes of the civil rights movement. Let's take a break. Let's watch some best of Bomba Live clips. And when I come back, I'm going to talk about my week in D.C. America Votes Conference. It was an incredible time. You're going to hear some great voices of leaders coast to coast here on Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your entire life. So, dime que, give me what's the essential for the LA taco, Bob.
So I like a place that's called Angeles Tijuana, and they got a few spots, and they make killer al pastor, really good.
Come on,
And there's always huge lines. Now there's one right by Dodger Stadium on Sunset. It's really good. There's always, like I said, a huge line, and there's really nowhere to eat, so you're just getting it there and just and it's not the best to take it home because especially with al pastor and all that. So you want to just eat it while you're there. But that's a great spot, and they have like 5 of them. That place is really cool. Now, if you want to,
What's your favorite type of taco, Karina?
I like a classic. I'm a traditional person, so give me the carne asada.
Ay, Dios,
I
sí.
have to have doble tortilla. If your tacos are not doble tortilla, they're not tacos. Also, if you don't have beans, I don't want them refried. They're also not tacos. And your salsa better be as good or better, sorry, Mom, than my mom's.
I think why I'm so passionate about it, and for those that are thinking, oh, this is like a Puerto Rican thing, Collazo got an agenda que lo boricua póngalo ahí, Latinos go. Well, I think a few of those Latinos are getting a little shaky. And we'll talk about it right another time. But I mean, how many times does the guy have to apologize? The guy's the greatest left side of the infield fielder we ever saw. Steroids or no steroids, let's grow up. But I would not have voted for Edgar Martinez in the Hall of Fame because I don't think he was a Hall of Famer. And I'm glad he's Puerto Rican. He's in. He's my brother's favorite player. Wonderful. But I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. He didn't have the long enough career. But if you're talking about, if it's all about being like a good guy and just being good enough, how about Carlos Delgado? How about Carlos Beltran? How about Juan Gonzalez? Juan Gonzalez actually, unlike that guy, he won 2 MVPs. Scarrolla never won an MVP. And Juan Gonzalez only got 150 more home runs, 200 more RBIs, and 80% higher slugging percentage, and he won 2 MVPs. And let's not get into Carlos Beltran, who was also on the ballot today, didn't get in. And let's not even get into Carlos Delgado, whose offensive statistics dwarf Scott Rowland's. And by the way, you talk about character. People say, oh, he's not in the Hall of Fame because he didn't stand for the national anthem for Vieques because the U.S. military was bombing Vieques. They were bombing Vieques. They have now been taken out of Vieques out of decades of protesting because they were destroying the environment on the island of Vieques in that's part of Puerto Rico. And now Carlos Delgado's position, when it was vilified at the time, has now been rendered relevant and correct. So that's not character. You don't get any style points for that. Welcome back to Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your entire life. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, this episode is dedicated to the memories of Angel Luis Medina, who I'm going to talk about in the next segment, as well as Elizabeth Guaracao, 2 dear community leaders, icons, pioneers that we've lost from the Philadelphia Puerto Rican Latino community. And again, in the next segment, you're going to hear a little bit more about reflections about those 2 wonderful people. What I want to talk about in this segment of Bomba Live, the talk you've been waiting for your whole life, is I wanted to talk about my time in Washington, D.C. last week. I was attending the America Votes conference. If those don't know, America Votes is a convening, is the sort of the convening of left-leaning advocacy groups around the country, what we refer to as 501c4 organizations. So that's sort of a tax status that allows nonprofit organizations to do advocacy and do a certain level of political activity. So that's the entity I run for my parent organization. And so when I used to go to this conference starting 10 years ago, it was much smaller. It was like 300 to 500 people. And I literally, as I said in some of my remarks you're going to hear in a moment, I literally could count the Latinos, and I knew all of them. And so the first thing I wanted to share with you all is that we've come a long way, fam. This conference, first of all, is 3 times bigger than I ever remembered. It was over 2,000 people. It's very strong showing, I think, of just in general progressive energy, because you got there everybody under the tent, environmental groups, civil rights organizations, LGBT organizations, women's rights, good government, voting rights groups, labor. So you had all kind of different types of advocates there from all backgrounds in 47 states, I believe they said. And so it was really a strong showing of not just sort of the progressive movement, but the energy that's out there, particularly with young people. So really, really exhilarating. And then the other part of it is that I think it's safe to say that the Latino vote has arrived, but this conference and this time I had in Washington really showed me that the Latino leadership community has really squeezed in there and brought their own chairs, but they have put a seat at the progressive table and a progressive leadership in this country here to stay, because you got to remember, fam, I think there was about, I'd say, now remember, I used to count the Latinos at this darn thing. I used to count the black people at this thing. I mean, this thing was not very diverse, you would think, for progressives, even till, I'm talking 6-7 years ago, that the Latino groups have evolved and matured, including my organization. And we were well represented from Florida, Texas, Arizona, you name it. But the advocacy groups that aren't necessarily Latino focused have to engage the Latino community. So if you have an environmental organization, if you don't have a Latino staff, and you're not working on engaging younger Latinos, you're going to die off. Same for all the other groups. So you had LGBT Latino leaders, you had environmental activists, you had labor leaders. Shout out to my man Dan Ramos from the Ohio and Education Association Union. I'm going to talk about Ohio. You're going to hear from an Ohio leader in a second. So there was, a lot popping. So there's a lot to feel good about from a Latino advocacy perspective. I think in terms of kind of the political takeaways I wanted y'all to get, and again, since y'all couldn't be there, most of you, wanted to make sure you understood kind of what's going on. I think in general, my sense of it, and I've been talking about it, my sense of where the incredible importance of the Latino community in the 2024 election from a House perspective, the fact that the Latino community is going to decide what party controls the House side of the Congress, was confirmed to me by talking to advocates from places like Colorado and California and Texas, where even in some of those states that are really kind of like red or blue at this point, they're not as competitive with the presidential and the Senate, some of the Senate races, but they have congressional districts that are going to be key, that could go either way, and the Latino community is going to decide those elections. I think in terms of where we need to get, and something that I think the Latino leadership was very loud about and very clear about to the other groups, that we have to, the other leadership there that has to work with us to kind of flesh out, we have the resources for it, is that we still have a way to go to connect with Latino voters on economic messaging. We talked about it. I think we're moving in that direction, but certainly outside the national political ecosystem, like the party structure and the independent groups that aren't necessarily Latino focused on the ground, they don't have it. They've got polling, but we have the reality, right? And that we know that we have a lot way to go. Most Latinos that are working 2 jobs and just are paying way too much rent for their 2-bedroom outside of Orlando. They don't know about the impact of that. There's something called the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the things that they'll see that are going to impact them 3 years from now out of it. So they just see the reality that they're going through. So we have to do a better job and really invest in messaging in a real, keep it real way, the idioma, to the Latino community around economic messaging. Because certainly, as much as I can be critical of the Democrats and the progressive movement at times that are part of this, that they certainly at least something there to offer. And we are moving in the right direction in many ways. You could argue with the Biden administration, the other side don't got nothing going for itself other than hatred and quieren controlar todo nosotros. Their agenda is about control and power, and that's not going to impact us very positively, because who's going to be controlled? Us. The other part, one of the other things I wanted to share was that there is a vacuum. And, I even struggle with thinking about where's my role in this in a bigger way. There was really a vacuum of leadership and investment in elevating Latino leaders as it relates to the gun safety crisis that we have. Fam, there's a real crisis. And I know maybe I'm extra sensitive to it because Philadelphia is like one of the ground zeros, because it's really, 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 scary and hurting a lot of people. But nationally, we need just a lot more investors, a lot of good leadership out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of families. I think about the Monterosa family in California I'm connected to, and some of the Uvalde families, so it's unfortunately a lot of us do get shine in this movement out of being victims and mothers of victims or family of victims. But we need to, all of us, the victims, the families that are impacted, the communities most impacted, we all need to come together and we need a stronger voice at that table. So I think more to come on that, but that's something that I put the call out to the fam here, that we need more of us to step up to be involved in that conversation. I think tactically there was two things that really came out. One, which I want to take more leadership in, and I'm a big proponent of, is, we have a Latino male problem. We're not doing, and it's connected to the econ piece. We're not doing a great job of connecting our messaging and listening and responding to what Latino men are telling us. And Latino men are telling us that we're not doing a good job connecting with them, and that, they're the ones that are drifting to the Republican Party. Well, because at least they talk about, my money being good, and maybe they don't put me down as a guy. And that's some of the dynamics we're dealing with, fam. So I think we need to work on that. I'm going to be working on that. And that's something that we need this whole political ecosystem to not ignore, because Black Latino men are telling us they want more attention. They want more messaging. They want to be more engaged in our movement. And we need to do that and not criticize them for just having a different perspective. Let's bring them into this conversation. And then the last thing, which was really interesting, and I want to shout out so many of the leaders, mostly Black, Latino, and Native American, that brought this to the conference, was this question of this need for us to engage people of color that live in rural areas better. It's so interesting, right? We always think about the big cities, and and that's kind of the easiest place to organize because the concentration, density, and you can kind of get to a lot of people relatively quickly. But we got a lot of Black Latinos that live in rural areas. You know what I'm saying? Like particularly in the South, and in the case of the Latino Native American community in places like Arizona and Colorado and Texas and Nevada, and we have a lot of Latinos that live in rural Central California. We got a lot of Latinos that are agriculture or just live in small town America. So we have to do a better job supporting leadership from our rural communities. So there was a lot of really interesting, really super interesting stuff. And so what I want to do is now give an opportunity for you to hear from, I'm going to shut up for a second because I want you to hear from these people. I was able to interview a handful of activists that were part of the conference. This is just to be honest with you, fam, this is just a very, very small taste of the kind of leadership that I was blessed to connect with around the country. So you're going to hear from some of the leaders that were at this conference, America Votes Conference, and hear from them about what they think you should be thinking about as it thinks about organizing in politics in 2023, and their perspective from their local communities. We got people from the East Coast, the South, the West Coast that we were able to collaborate with, and I want you to hear from them. So let's start with John Loredo from the great state of Arizona, and then you're gonna hear my comments. I had to throw a party at this jump, fam. So I threw myself, Unidos U.S. Action Fund, Equis Lab, and Community Change Action through the Latino reception at this event. It was kind of like the poppinest party, how we do. So at the end of this series of clips, you're going to hear my speech that sort of topped off the Latino convening at the America Votes Conference. So let's hear from my dear friend John Loredo and the rest of these great leaders from around the country. And then we come back from the clips. We'll talk a little bit about the people we lost this week and what they meant to our lives here on Bomba Live, the talk you've been waiting for your entire life.
Action. Hello, my name is John Loredo. I'm from Arizona. Been in this work for a very long time. We're here at the America Votes Conference, which is the largest C4 progressive umbrella organization in the country. They've been a big supporter of ours in Arizona for a long time, and it's really important for us to be here at this event, not only to share what we've accomplished in Arizona and the strength of organizing in the Latino community and building progressive infrastructure that has led to some serious victories in Arizona, both legislatively and statewide elections. We've really come into our power in Arizona, but it's important to be in these circles to tell our story about how we did that, how we started from nothing to grow into a powerhouse, because that needs to happen everywhere. We need to not just flex our muscle here in Arizona, but we need to flex our muscle across the country, because we truly are the difference in winning elections or losing elections, and we're done losing. It's time to win some. So we're here sharing our power and our story, and we need to empower ourselves nationally from now on.
Greetings, folks. Dwight Bullard coming from the great state of Florida at Florida Rising. One message that I want to send to my people is that, in the words of Queen Latifah, UNITY, we all need unity in this moment, and not in some, kind of rainbow coalition sense, but the fact that our money, our culture, our music, our food are more linked than we give ourselves credit for. And if we're talking about kitchen table issues, if we're talking about how to make our families whole, if we're talking about how to keep our people out of jail and prison, we have to start having real conversations about how we, in our respective Black and brown communities, truly unite. So looking forward to that conversation now through 2024.
Hola mi gente, mi nombre es Selina Pagan and I am from Cleveland, Ohio, a proud Boricua from Cleveland, Ohio. Really excited to really be involved. This week we're in DC at the America Votes Conference and we are really trying to understand nuestra voz y nuestro poder como Boricuas here in the States and in the diaspora, and I think it's really important for us to get more involved to understand our power because we're sleeping giants here and there are more of us here in the diaspora than there are in the island, and we can build some political power and we can be a force to be reckoned with. So I hope you guys all get involved and start to understand nuestra historia, de nuestra gente, to really understand why it's important for us to be involved today. So thank you for tuning in.
Action.
Hi everyone, my name is Rosario, she, they pronouns, and I am with Latino Network Action Fund. We are kind of the importance of bringing in people in the space, whether that's other community partners or having coalitions, just making sure that when you're making decisions that you're bringing in community members and other BIPOC groups and everything that we're doing.
Hola Rafael, un placer estar aquí con ustedes en el Centro de Convenciones de Washington, D.C., sacándole el máximo provecho a esta actividad profesional, académica, un ejercicio de reflexión con American Votes. Estoy muy contento de ver mucha población latina, mucha comunidad latina, mucha comunidad afrodescendiente, muchos miembros de la comunidad LGTB. En el tema de género fue un tema que se abordó bastante, y obviamente el tema de la economía, la inflación, la generación de trabajos, fue un ejercicio muy provechoso. Así como que hay que ponerle ganas al trabajo que estamos haciendo. El trabajo de democracia es un trabajo continuo e ininterrumpido, no solo un trabajo electoral. Y bueno, desde Casa en Acción, Julio, Cesar, Gayit, Guevara, muchísimas gracias, Rafael, y saludos a todos los que nos están sintonizando.
Gratefulness. A year ago, I was literally going to wake up and pack to come to this conference, and I couldn't get out of bed because I contracted Guillain-Barré, and it's a funky thing, and so I've been this last year in recovery. And so I'm just blessed, first of all, to be able to stand here in front of you today. I'm in gratefulness to my team that's out in the field doing the good work. Liz, Eric, Jared, the rest of our team, our Solidarity family. And regardless of the color of the state, the Latino community, whether it's in Florida, Texas, Arizona, California, throughout the country, matters. And they're going to work with our brothers and sisters here to continue that fight. I'm grateful for our collaborators today, Community Change Action, Ecky's Lab. Let me tell you something, these are organizers. We had meetings about making sure the playlist was culturally, all the generations, all the genres were represented. So if you hear some 90s salsa, you know where that came from. So, particularly one of my Dominican young brothers, Alexis Acevedo, who brought us all together. And he's just done an incredible job, and the rest of the family here. And I'm just grateful for all of y'all. A few of you are old enough to remember when America Votes conferences, you could count the Latinos. Yeah. And we all knew each other. And I'm proud to say I know very few of you. So that means that our community's growing, it's empowered, and I think it's such a big statement, not just about the Latino vote next year, but that the Latino leadership community is at the progressive table and we're here to stay. Thank you all so much.
Started when I was 17 years old. So essentially I went to, I was on tour as a young girl. I grew into adulthood through freestyle music. And not only did I do that, I did that with fans who did that with me. So I still am in touch with fans that I have been friends with, went from fans to friends to family even since 1986. So it gives me a purpose. It gives me a purpose and a sense of pride to be able to share my culture, my music, my personality, myself, my love, everything with the fans that I think of this genre that are just the most amazing fans.
After death of Cocotazo, okay? The gentleman here in my life right now in the moment, we have JW, thank you for coming back. And of course we have K7 of TKA.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, oh my goodness, I love it that I have JW.
I think Cocotazo has probably won more wars than any army America has ever had, has done more for the Latino community than Friday the 13th, than any Cuco could ever have. What do you know about the Cocotazo?
What about, oh my God. As a kid, I had a very strong relationship with Cocotazo. Cocotazo's changed my life. And you know what? And sadly, I was there to repartir some cocotazos as well along my time.
Listen, each one teach one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There ain't no time out. Time out
and
is, let me pick up the, hold on, espérate.
Yes.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your entire life. Thank you so much for joining us. If you don't know who these people are, you're not as cool as you think you are. But anyway, that was the legendary freestyle diva, Betty D from Sweet Sensation, who's a very regular contributor to the show, and you're going to be seeing a lot more of her on Bomba Live in 2023. JW Cortez, the papi chulo of the neighborhood, a great actor and philanthropist. He has a wonderful foundation for a former police officer that passed away, was killed on the line of duty many years ago. So we always support all his endeavors, JW, and of course the legendary K7. And if y'all are nice to me, I'll show you some pictures I have with K7 from this year. I recently was partying with him. Betty D's got to be part of that conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to, in this last segment of Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your whole life, I wanted to talk about some of the fans we've lost in the physical, but will always be with us. This gentleman here in classic Jibaro look, Angel Luis Medina Sr., is an icon that we lost this past week in the Philadelphia Puerto Rican Latino community. Angel founded and really birthed the Latino Partnership Institute, several other organizations that focused on helping people throughout the city of Philadelphia. I was amazed around how many people were part of his leadership development work that expressed their condolences. That I have family didn't even knew him. Much less were touched by Angel. And I think in terms of thinking about what Angel taught me, and Angel literally grew up across the street from my dad. Childhood chums, there's fam here, and his sons and daughters and real family and sister. And, you can't grow without pain. And that's always one of the things, that's the thing he taught me, is that it's not going to be easy. And Angel is a bomb thrower, and that's not my style. So when I was first kind of getting in the adult world of activism, Angel was like, throwing a lot of bombs. You know what I mean? A lot of them were necessary, not all of them, frankly, but a lot of them were. And I think he taught me that, you've got to move this along. We can't be nice all the time. We got to get to it. We got to be straight up, and we got to push people and make people feel uncomfortable. So really understanding it, being uncomfortable is part of the deal, I think, was a big part of what Angel taught me. The second thing is that, it's one thing to, Angel was so comfortable in being unapologetically Puerto Rican. And that's one thing when you're from the island, or you're someone whose Spanish is perfect, or you're someone that, but it's kind of Philly Ricans and New Rican culture and more English speaking, and I don't even know how much time as a kid he spent on the island. I'm not sure, but the bottom line is that he didn't let him being a mainland based Puerto Rican take away from him being unapologetically Puerto Rican. And I really admire that about him. And it's not easy from people of his generation, where being Puerto Rican was really cool in a lot of ways. And and the racism that those first families, really in places like Philadelphia and other smaller Northeast communities dealt with. So him being unabashed, and even in this era too, when it was kind of like more fashionable or more common or expected that Puerto Ricans and all the Latino groups would fold into the larger Latino umbrella, he always held up the flag, even though he did a lot for the Latino community across the board and helped everybody. And the other thing is, Coño, Angel was a fucking survivor, man. He survived cancer for, I don't know, over a decade. I mean, I don't know all the medical details, but I'll be honest. I mean, he passed at 70, 71. I didn't think he was going to last that long, knowing what I knew about his medical situation over 10 years ago. So Angel fucking fought. Angel wanted to do this and wanted to, not only be part of his family life and his wife, and but he wanted to represent for the community. And there was a lot of times when I know he wasn't feeling good, but he did his thing, and in true Angel Boricua style, man, he survived Irma and Maria on the island at his house in Valdo, solo. And I was looking for them, I'm going to try to find them in the archives, but some of the social media posts that he sent us and videos that he shared with us and shared with me personally, around those harrowing near-death experiences as a ongoing cancer survivor, and not a young boy, and being by himself in the middle of the campo in Valdo, and to survive 2 hurricanes back to back, and live to tell about it, and come back to Philadelphia and organize to send resources back to the island. So, a fighter. And in my small way, I've tried to honor him with my, much less serious health situation over the past year. So a true fighter, Philly fighter. You know what I'm saying? We love you, Angel. We're going to be, if you're watching this, I'm going to release this. I'm taping this Monday evening. His viewing is the following day, Tuesday evening. If you're in Philadelphia, he'll be at the Givness Funeral Home on 5th Street, around in the East Oak Lane, Albany area. If you're there, if you're around Tuesday night, feel free to stop by. But, Angel, we're all going to celebrate you, and we're going to be there for you. And, we're family for life, brother. So you're always going to be with us, and your family's always going to be family to us in the living form. So love you, brother. The other person I wanted to shout out and share our condolences is Elizabeth Guaracao. Elizabeth Guaracao, the woman here pictured with her husband of decades, and now Guaracao, is another pioneer. Elizabeth Guaracao was the co-founder of Aldea newspaper and Aldea's digital platform. Aldea really has gone beyond just being kind of the most celebrated bilingual news outlet in the Philadelphia journalism space and the media market, but it really is a nationally recognized media publication. And I was honored as a college kid having the opportunity to collaborate with them on an internship program that I was helping oversee with some high school students. And when Aldea started in the offices of a funeral parlor on 5th Street in Philadelphia, in the Albany section, I was able to witness as a 19, 20-year-old college student the beginnings of what Elizabeth and Hernan began and built, that legacy that they built together as husband and wife and as business owners. And Elizabeth was, a total class act, really had an incredible quiet strength, una colombiana, 100%, when it was time to crack a smile and have some fun and, have a light moment, she was there, but also she was no nonsense. She took care of business, made sure everything was on point. Y siempre muy amable. So, Dios la bendiga, Elizabeth, Hernan, what can I say? We love you guys, and y'all have been always, the Guaracaos were always so good to the Collazos. Y'all have been super, super generous about what we bring to the table. And, You've always supported everything we've done, from my brother, my dad, my mom, me, Mike, all of us, Don Rafa, everybody. So, much respect, and Dios lo bendiga. Descanse en paz, Elizabeth Guaracao. I want to take a real quick break and then talk about Bad Bunny and Coachella. And then we're going to wrap it up in a way I think that Angel Medina would appreciate, here on Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your entire life.
But the most important part is the rum. So I already poured it out. This is about a cup and a half. If you put more than that, it's just super strong, and that gives you that nice heat that some people are looking for.
Then you're gonna fall asleep with the
Yep, you're gonna fall asleep with the
Yeah, it's a delicate balance.
I am going to blend away. Hold on, here we go. You hear that magic?
Oh man! If only virtually we could put it through the screen.
Oh, I know, right?
I'm picking up my 2 bottles tomorrow. I already got my appointment.
Oh my God, look.
I'll be ready for Christmas
magic.
Eve.
I already have a cup. It's already beautiful and ready to go.
Awesome. Well, let's raise our glasses for not only a great caterer and businesswoman, but a prima, one of my young primas. So, saludos.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you guys for having me.
Welcome back to Bomba Live, the talk show you've been waiting for your entire life. Thank you so much for joining us. That was Tiffany Sierra, a.k.a. Cocina Sierra. You follow her on social media, a fantastic Puerto Rican cook, chef. And, you're going to be seeing her a lot more on Bomba Live this year because, we don't get the cooking going. By the way, you see, when people come on Bomba Live, they blow up. You see my girl Omi on Next Level Chef. You see that, right? And Omi, I don't want to say I discovered her because she blew up. She don't need me to be big. But, what talk show did you see Omi on first a couple years ago when she was on the come up? Aki, Papa. Bomba Live. So we respect Omi, Tiffany, all of our chefs. Sabo would love. And, we love to bring the cooks on there. So just a quick word about Bad Bunny. He was, Bad Bunny, frankly, has been going through a very annoying Hollywood period that I think his true fans really haven't been feeling very much. He's been spending a lot of time there practicando su inglés. I'm sure he's got all these wonderful projects we don't know about yet. And we're starting to learn about. But, like all the time in LA, especially with this mooch, Kendall Jenner, who's her family, the ultimate culture vultures. And she's being a vulture, so, the connect is not living the lyrics, fam. So, Benito, I hope you snap out of it. I hope this is some huge marketing ploy to bust into the American market and you're going to cut her loose. But, Benito, you do not want to chow with that woman because that's not, then you're going to be stuck in LA half the time because you're a good guy. You want to be with your kids and you're not going to be able to be yourself because that's not in your, and bro, she can't dance for shit, dog. I mean, I saw the Coachella, her watching you, and she don't even know what you're singing. So get it together, Pop. But I will say this, Bad Bunny, and I want to give a shout out to his, he's always got something up his sleeve. So I want to give a shout out to the collaboration he's got with our homies here at Grupo Frontera. Regional Mexican music on the come up. This is a really cool collaboration. A track came out today. I encourage you to listen to it. Check it out. This looks like me and my homies Ernesto and Leo hanging out on the weekend. This Puerto Rican Mexican love fest here. The much respect to my homies. So he's got a lot. And by the way, Farruko's got a track with a regional Mexican singer, Rick Conriquez. So, this seems like this is the theme of the year for the Música Urbana crowd. They're going to be collaborating with these Mexican regional artists, and we're going to make all the money. Because if you bring those two crowds together, and those are some powerhouse industries right there in Latin music, then, the best is yet to come. But, Benito did perform something, which I think will be very appropriate, did present something in his Coachella performance, which I encourage you to watch it. It was popping. Johnny Randy, estaba ahí. Post Malone was up in that joint with him. His dancers. It was an incredible performance. He always, Dalian Pechao was up in there with him. Jay Cortez performed with him. It was awesome. So check out the Coachella performance on YouTube. My homie Eladi Carrion performed as well. And a lot of cool artists. Blink 182. It's a lot of fun. Check it out on YouTube and a lot of diverse genres. And definitely something worth checking out and scrolling around. But he began his performance, or one of the beginning intro videos that Bad Bunny started his performance on, was not just a homage to salsa music and salsa dancing, which his dancers did, but really keeping it real about how this is Black music. whether it's salsa, whether it's mambo, whether it's reggaeton, and that he is continuing the legacy of Afro Puerto Rican, Afro Caribbean, Afro Cuban music, Afro Panamanian music, Afro Jamaican. The list goes on and on. It's all black. And oftentimes we don't acknowledge that and really own it, fam. Let's be honest about it. And so I wanted to end this show with one of the videos I want to end. I also want to end with Vilmar Vasquez, who's going to talk about the ongoing advocacy she's doing on the island to protect, keep the beaches for Puerto Ricans, porque las playas son del pueblo. And so, which is something that was also very close to Angel Medina's heart. So I want to show those videos because that's what Angel Medina was about, keeping it real and being unapologetically Puerto Rican, even when it made people uncomfortable. So this video talking about how the Bad Bunny and the Música Urbana movement is a continuation of the Black Afro Latino, Afro Caribbean culture and Black culture. Excuse me, it may make a few people uncomfortable, but you gotta, that uncomfort is where we're gonna learn, we're gonna grow together. So I want to play this video of that performance. I think it's also a little bit of a makeup for Bad Bunny's very awkward answer around colorism in the Latino community and in the reggaeton movement in his Time magazine article. And I'm going to talk later this week about the colorism problem in reggaeton that I'm seeing, not just in that awkward answer from Bad Bunny, but also in another content platform I want to discuss, which I generally like, but there's a big hole there with that as it relates to colorism. And these are issues that we have to discuss. Also need to talk about Tekashi 6ix9ine, but we're going to do that in another